hopefully you were able to make some connections with some folks here and ask some people to be in your buddy seat. So up next, we have our farmer panel. So they're going to answer the question of, what the Jetsons, the Flintstones, and farmers have in common. And Kelly Livernoy, who you saw earlier, is going to be moderating the panel. So come on out. Kelly, Rod, Vince, and Quentin. We'll get you seated. And we have farmers represented, you can see on here, from Nebraska, Minnesota, and South Dakota. So we'll get you all seated. Let's give them a round of applause. All right, have fun.
Thank you, Camille. And thank you to our farmers for being here and taking a break from the fields to be with us. I'd like to introduce each one, but also have them tell you just a little bit about themselves and, maybe their favorite question to answer. How many acres do you farm? No, I'm kidding. I told you. I purposely said I wouldn't do that for you. Quentin, do you mind telling us a little bit about yourself?
All right, yep. I'm Quentin Keneally. We farm corn and soybeans on the east side of Nebraska, Tekamah, Nebraska, and 60% irrigated farming and right along the Missouri River.
Welcome, Vince. A little bit about yourself.
I'm Vince Eberhardt. I farm with my brothers and father in north central South Dakota. We generally grow corn, soybeans, and wheat and run a cow-calf operation. We do some other specialty crops.
Thank you. Red?
Rod Beyer from Wheaton, Minnesota, and we grow corn, soybeans, sugar beets, and some alfalfa.
Perfect. So not that we're going to talk, much about bushel. We're trying not to talk too much about ourselves here, but just to kind of set the baseline, are you using bushel tools? Which ones, if so? Quentin, do you mind?
Yeah, I've been using the bushel powered through NORAG, my local elevator, for our soybean delivery, and use them a lot with settlement sheets and grain tickets for now.
So I use what was farm logs. I was an early adopter of farm logs, and now Bushel Farm. And our co-op also has used Bushel in the past as well. So I've been exposed to it that way too.
Our local co-op has the Bushel app, and I use it every day looking at prices, scale tickets, and signing contracts, all that.
Good. And so maybe a little bit more broad about technology. What benefits, or what type of technology maybe, let's just start there, are you using on the farm today? And if you'd like to also just tell us a little bit about the benefits that you've seen as well. Yeah, go ahead, Quentin.
Okay, yep. So we're a big John Deere operation, so we run John Deere Operations Center. We track all our tillage and planting tractors and combines, everything via the Ops Center. So we've been integrating everything with that, joining on that platform. It's came a long ways with our farm in the last 2 or 3 years. So just studying a lot of utilization, how they work on our farm, and being able to watch every machine work on our farm while I'm sitting in the planting seat. Today I'm in the buddy seat. It's a lot more comfy. But yeah, just integrating all these new platforms of technology to soil moisture probes to we got autonomous pivots. So we got eyes on top of our pivots now. So since we're mainly irrigated, so lots of fun stuff coming down the pipeline, and I'm sure we'll touch on more here. So.
Quentin, real quick, I forgot to let y'all know, if you're not already following him on TikTok or Twitter, you should be, because he's hilarious. Vince, how about you?
Now he needs to be funny the next time he talks.
All right, no pressure. Just watch his videos.
It's a big seat to fill. You got quotations around funny.
So we've got a blend of a lot of technology that we're using with, we use custom, we actually have our corn custom planted because of and it's a close friend, and the technology that they have, and they're running the precision plant stuff. We do all of our own. If we do small grains or soybeans, we do that with our equipment. So we have just gotten into mapping our fields in the last 4 or 5 years, and so we're getting that. This is the first year we have used technology to strip till our zones. We tried a little bit of that. That's something new for us. And so it's just, I'll give a little kind of example. Somebody earlier had mentioned about, I think maybe it was Jake or whatever, talked about, the grain ticket flying out the semi window as, whoever was coming back to. So I was the organized, annoying guy because I was always in the combine. So I got them clipboards, you guys remember the ones that would open up, there's a thing underneath. They'd have a map of every field, there'd be lines. All they had to do was write in everything and then stick it in there. Now I can just go into my local elevator, my local co-op app, and I can see all of that information, which is huge. They're like, oh yeah, I think the ticket was in my pants or something. I'm like, I don't care. I know what was on that load. I know that's right here. So, I think, that's some of the technology we're using.
Yeah. Red, do you employ much technology?
So we also use John Deere ops and everything John Deere. But one other thing we use to play to the merchandisers out here, one of my dad's side hustles growing up, he was a licensed commodity broker, and he had 5 different offices around the area. And so I grew up watching the DTN and all the recorded phone calls of the trades, and it wasn't just grains, it was softs and metals and oils, everything. And if he could see today how we just go on the software and point and click, and you don't have to worry about phone calls and what he said or she said, and calling people back with a fill, that's an amazing technology today too. That's often overlooked.
Yeah, we've come a long way, and actually I'm going to ask you a little bit about where you think we should go and what that means. But ROI, like how do you have one piece of technology you think you're using today that's given you a good ROI?
So I really love the John Deere ditching software. In the Red River Valley, one of our issues that's a little different than many other places is we have too much water where a lot of people are trying to irrigate. We need to get rid of it with our tiling and surface drainage. And in the old days, we had to have a laser we would drag out in a field, and you'd have to set the plane of the a 3/100th of a degree of slope, and then you'd go out in your ditch, and then God forbid that you need a ditch sloping back the other direction, so you'd have to run back to the laser and turn it, and boy, if it was windy out and would rock your laser, we'd park a grain truck. But now with the GPS and the RTK systems where we can just pull into a field, drive it, you got the auto steer that makes a perfectly straight ditch, and then boom, pull out and go to the next field without any setup, and it's an amazing technology.
So it's really about reducing the headache, the concern, the hassle, probably saving the time.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's great. Vince, do you have a piece of technology you feel like has given good ROI on your farm? And I can pass to Quentin because I bet he's got some ideas for us.
Oh yeah, ROI is a tough subject too because it's kind of how you value your time.
Yeah.
So I mean, it saves you a lot of time from running around. I can get into any of my tractors and look at the monitor, help a guy walk through a new process or something, and get everything set for him without jumping in the pickup, leaving my seat, and wasting my time. So it's hard to put a value on some of that. And then with all these technologies, it saves you time with your family and time at home and time getting other processes you need to work on done. So it's hard to put a value on that. And then we got our equipment's not getting bigger anymore. It seems like it's getting faster, more efficient. So there's a lot of time and effort that goes with that, and making sure every movement is precise. So there's a lot of quotation around ROI there, and it's how you value your time and how you use it. And I think this technology coming down the pipeline, if you can embrace it and use a little bit at a time, I think it's baby steps. It feels like big jumps, but it's actually little baby steps in making every little precise movement on the farm. I see. Does that answer your question?
It does, and I am going to talk or ask a little bit about the future. If you could imagine what 10, 50, whatever years looks like in the future, what do you think technology is going to do for your farm?
No, it's a big jump too. So I think we're gonna probably lose a few operators. I think autonomy is probably gonna take off here. You're already seeing it a little bit. You're going to see the tractor driving itself for simple tasks like maybe tillage and maybe ditching and stuff like that. Stuff that it's not going to planting. It's a ways out on planting, but I mean it's going to be here somewhere. But planting something, you got to be out there and you got to be out there checking and make sure everything's precise too under the ground. Or tillage, if it's going the right speed, depth, and looks all right, you're generally all right. So I think autonomy is probably the big one.
And I think, and it's already happening, but, it used to be, hey, we're going to zone sample, or we're going to, we're going to get it down to the square foot of, if not even a narrower or a smaller chunk, because we're going to have to be more efficient and to, supply the world with food. And the other thing that I see, and we've already seen it, is just the targeting of weeds or herbicide. With the autonomous, you're going to send something out, and it's going to have the ability to recognize what that weed is. It's going to go shoot the chemical right there.
Yep.
And I think that's going to be a game changer.
How do you feel like technology is going to play into the future of your farm, Brad?
So back in the early 90s, I worked for a software startup company in agriculture out in Colorado, and we were trying to develop one of the first yield monitors on the combine, and we did it. And one of my tasks that I remember was trying to find a farmer that would put a yield monitor in his combine. And we didn't have cell phones back then. So first I had to reach farmers on a landline during business hours and then get them to agree to this. And I think at one time I counted it took me 114 phone calls before I was able to locate somebody that could do it. And so you go from back then where we had to push technology on farmers. And then I remember when I started farming then, I was an early adopter. I wanted all the technology. I was like, why aren't we doing this? This looks really cool. We got to have it. And then, like early 2010s, I had a pre-teenage daughter that was sitting in my buddy's seat, and we were making mile-long rounds planting corn. And it was auto steer. It's got all the technology, 5 monitors in the combine, in the planter tractor, and she's like, why are we in here? And I was like, well, what if we have a flat tire? We're going to have to stop it and do something about that. She's like, well, doesn't it tell you that on your phone? So we went from, pushing technology to wanting technology, and these kids coming up just assume the technology has to be there, and it has to be in your hand. And that's up to the Bushel team to figure out how they're going to have all this information right there for these people.
Yeah, it's true. So then is there one piece in the future that you think is really exciting, like the AI potentially? We didn't talk much about that. Sounds like maybe weed control for you, and but anything in particular that you think is coming down or could be there in the future you're really excited about?
On the AI?
No, on technology in general for your farm.
So what I've asked the Bushel team to do, one of my problems on our farm is I would like to get rid of a little more of the communication that we have to do verbally, where my farm north to south is 30 miles, east to west, 30 miles, so 900 square miles. And just coming out of the springtime now, in the valley, not everything dries off and is ready to plant the same day. So one of the tasks that's always hard for us is, where do we have to go? And so somebody has to drive around, find the field that's ready to have fertilizer applied. Well, then you got to call the fertilizer guy and send him out there. And it's a timeline then of wanting to know when is that field fertilized so we can send a tillage guy and a planter guy. And it's just a communication portal where it would all be integrated, so it's not calling the fertilizer guy, are you there yet? Are you there yet? If it was on our phones, ready to go, what's the ETA, is it done yet? And then have everybody on the team be able to see that information And so it would cut down on text messages and phone calls is something I would like to see.
Logistics, yeah. Any other ideas for?
I think a big word here is convenience. I heard earlier is really nice. Not having to go somewhere to the elevator or bank anymore and e-sign and run to the elevator or retailer. But and then I lost my train of thought. All right, I was going somewhere with that. But next one was integration. So as with all these technologies, if we can get each one's taking steps, and if we can get them to all talk to each other and be in one kind of hub in place, I think it just make our life a lot easier on the farm side. So you see that a lot with the John Deere Operations Center. I mean, you guys tapped into it with Bushel, and my agronomists get in there, and my marketing guy, if he gets on Bushel, we can get in there. We're on a different platform right now, but we're working on that. But there's just a lot of stuff we can integrate into a nice hub for all the farmers because they get so many apps on their phone too. So we hear that a little bit all the time. So just little things like that.
Yeah, and I mentioned AI just because I spend most of my days talking with farmers, and I can't tell you how many have been mentioning it lately to me. I can't wait till they can do more for me. I think I'm going to save so much time. I'm going to be able to do so much more. So it's exciting stuff, I think, to come. But with that, sometimes comes some fear. So implementing technologies in the past, I don't know if you've had any of those, maybe that were scarier than else. And what are some of the hurdles that you kind of have jumped through and kind of gotten over in a way? With John Deere, any experience with?
We kind of jumped off field view because a lot of that management stuff was going to John Deere Operations Center. So that you'll see some of those companies starting to go down and focus on different groups. So it's used a little bit there. My family's used soil moisture probes for irrigation 10, 15 years ago, and then I finally just jumped back in the last year or two. So you go away from it, but there's always that chance you can come back when stuff gets perfected a little bit more because it takes a little bit of time.
I just think if you're with technology, it can be frustrating. Speaking of technology, that it can be frustrating if you're the troubleshooter and you have someone that's not maybe as tech savvy and they're doing, you say to them, well, it was working fine when I was in there yesterday and it worked all day. I was in there for 10 hours and they've been in there for 20 minutes and they're like, yeah, it's not doing what it's supposed to do. And I don't, and so that can be frustrating, but there've been times where I've been working with one of our custom guys that does stuff for us. And, he had trouble with loading a prescription. I'm pulled off on the side of the road heading from our farm back to my home, which is 4 hours away. And, I'm hotspotting my iPad going in and rewriting the prescription. And then, then he's like, oh, okay, yeah, that populated. That's working now. I'm like, all right, there you go. Versus having to, like you were talking about, driving to do these things. I didn't have to go back and fix it for him. I could do it, with an internet connection, or cell phone connection.
And Rad, you've been a big adopter, but any concerns when you're taking on a new technology?
Why doesn't our tractors and equipment tell us what's wrong? Why does it have to send us a code and then you have to look it up in a book or call somebody? We have these great big displays. Why doesn't it just say, failed sensor here, the circuit is not working, whatever. Anyway.
It's true.
You should talk to Mother Deere about that.
Yes.
When you're adapting.
Yeah, so a failed concern, we did a lot of variable rate applications of fertilizer seed, and I would say it was probably an early adoption problem was the technology was too expensive, and we kind of dropped it again, and many of my neighbors have too, because we went from one fertilizer application in the spring, NPK, whatever, to going to trying to do it more precisely with 3 bins. So then you have a split application of P and K in the falls, and that's an extra cost, and then nitrogen in the spring. And then the Of course, the applicator wants a little extra money on top to pay for their technology that they have in there. And then with the variable rate, you can't incorporate a herbicide on your fertilizer. So then you're running a sprayer, so it's an extra cost there. And then you're either making the map yourself with time and the software you have to buy, or you're paying somebody to do it. And it just kept nickel and diming. It was another cost and another cost. And it was not paying for itself.
Yeah. Which is important. So that might lead in a little bit to one of the questions I had about what are you no longer interested in using? That would be probably yours.
I'll be interested again when the technology kind of gets a little more organized and cheaper, and how we can do it and save a buck.
Is there anything you've used, Quentin, that you don't want to use anymore necessarily? Or?
Kind of like I mentioned earlier, where we jumped from Field View to, we ran John Deere Operations Center and Field View, which is a separate iPad in there. So I kind of, with embracing some of this technology, I had to step back away from some, because actually I just use the Operations Center, so I don't have to put that extra, because I got an employee, I got to teach how to use one monitor instead of two. So just little things like that, little tweaks. You kind of go away from it for a while, and then, I mean, you can always still upload that stuff from Op Center into Field View. So just taking some steps out of the cab and making life easier in there for some of your employees on that route. So just little tidbits.
And these guys both run Deere, and we run Red. So, and we have some older equipment. We have only one of our combines is set up with mapping. We have an older machine that will run two when we do wheat and soybeans. And so that's been a challenge. You know, this isn't tie into what we don't want to use, but I mean, it ties into the technology of the iron. Like, do we want to get rid of that combine so that we can have, you know, that mapping? But then, you know, it goes back to it's paid for. I mean, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
You have those discussions.
Yeah, definitely. Switching a little bit to the agribusiness that we have, thankfully, in the room with us today. How does technology play a part in doing business?
So Jake nailed this in his opening comments, because it's one of my pet peeves, because the elevator is trying to build relationships, and when I'm calling, I'm just trying to get something done. I'm just trying to call them, get a contract for 10,000 bushels of corn and all the details. But you used to have to call in, Marge at the front desk answers the phone, and she wants to talk about the icy roads on her drive into town, and how her dog pooped on the carpet and a iRobot ran over it and ruined everything. And then I was like, you know, I'd just like to talk to Bob in the back room. And she's like, oh, I'm sorry, you know, he's at lunch or he's at a meeting, you have to call back later. Well, then you do that and go through the whole process again. And then Bob, of course, wants to tell you about the weather that's affecting the markets, and he's building the relationship, trying to tell you, you know, how smart he is and knowledgeable, and wants to build that relationship. And I'm like, come on, I just want to sell some grain here. And so when people like Bushel come up with the app where we can set our price and put it in the computer, and it helps me get things done and get them done timely. And I know it's a struggle from the other side trying to build that relationship, and that's, I guess, they're going to have to figure that out.
And I think to expound on what Rod said, I mean, if it's the middle of February and the wind's blowing and it's cold and snowy and you don't have cattle to feed or whatever, sure, you'll talk with Marge, then it's okay. I mean, you know, but when it's May 15th and you just want to, I mean, how easy is it to just, you know, go to your app and sell the 10,000 bushels and not have to, you know, do all that? So it's kind of, sometimes you want that, you know, and my father-in-law is the king of this. He wants to hear what Marge has all got going on and what Bill, you know, and so, but it's just having the ability to, if you want to do that and talk, that's fine. But if you don't, that's what, you know, it's like, hey, I can do this and I'm done. I don't have to, knowing that you're going to spend the 20 minutes on the phone.
Yeah, on that side, I think e-sign was really nice this year because we jumped in using this elevator like 2 years ago, and it was a little bit of a mess. And then since they brought on Bushel, I mean, we've my crop adjuster needs so and so grain tickets from this field, and I can jump on there, shoot a screenshot, shoot it to him. Problem solved in less than 30 minutes. And I mean, I'm working with him for 100 miles away, so just a lot of convenience goes in there. And then the e-sign, and then making contracts like that, like just throwing a number in there, just like texting somebody. Like, you got the grain elevator. I usually text them if I want this amount for this amount. And then if it's on an app, it's even easier. So just same deal. Just you cut out that middleman and done deal, and let's go. So
That's really helpful. I'm not sure if anybody else, I'm going to open up pretty soon. I don't know if we want to raise hands here shortly. But what do you think are the biggest gaps? Where do you see the biggest, opportunity for technology in agriculture today, broadly?
Oh, I think getting down to that, like you said, sub-inch accuracy on our fields, using a lot of VR scripting, integrating a lot more of that on our. Still, right now, I use a lot on my good acres, and just you take less off those bad acres, and where to put your money and when, I think, is a lot of it. And then marketing on one side. There's a lot of, I don't know. It's a funny game, but I'll come back if I think of something else. But go for it.
I mean, I think one of the challenges, I mean, like I had mentioned earlier, that we're going to be farming that, 1 square inch or that, whatever. And we're going to, and I know that we have multiple hybrid planters or two, that's on a full scale. That's going, I think we're going to look back at, and we're going to be like, oh, wow, why wouldn't I have 4 different hybrids on there, and that I'm going to change this for this part of my soil. And if you don't have variable soil, okay, then you're fine. I mean, but if you are in, you had mentioned you farm 30 miles north and south, 30 miles. I'm sure you've got a lot of variable in your soil. And so, just to have that ability to be, what's the word I'm looking for? Just the fluidity of it.
Yeah. And how do you end up staying up to date with technology? Where do you get this type of information? Are you reading about it? Are you talking about it? Are you waiting for people to bring it to you? Brad, do you?
I think I probably get a lot of it from Twitter and just watching common farmers and then getting the feedback on their comments, what they're actually seeing and doing. I really don't like the paid people that are on Twitter, and it seems a little too unlikely to be true sometimes. I like the honest comments on there, and that's where I'm most likely to find out what's working and what's not. And back, one of my earlier comments, it wasn't that long ago, there wasn't that much new technology, so it was easy to go after all of it. And today, there's so much of it that I don't always know if what I want is out there. And then when you do find what's out there, there might be 100 things that are trying to do that, but how do you sort through those 100 items to figure out which is the one that you want?
Can you think of something you adopted because of Twitter? Or did? I'll come back.
Come back.
How about you, Quentin? Where do you get your insights and stay up to date with things on?
I say Twitter a lot, and then from there it goes to the big. You create a big network there, so you got lots of people seeing stuff work from all over the world, and we start peer groups from there. I mean, I'm on peer groups from farmers from all the I-states. Just the way you connect and see how something works, what they're liking, what they're trying, what they're using. It's a wicked process of just how it tumbles, and you can find yourself. Like, I stumbled into a autonomous pivot, so we're going to be putting eyes on top of our pivots. So it's going to help my agronomists because they can't always walk every little inch or foot of the pivot. So I got eyes on top. So we're hoping that they're not on top yet, but they're coming. And so yeah, we'll just autonomous pivot, and then we got eyes everywhere now. So might as well use them.
That's right. You talk about using Twitter. I think that's interesting. That's part of all of this technology and what your dad didn't have, like you said. And what do you think, I mean, do you hear about things from your local agribusiness or agronomists as well? Is that how you sometimes learn about things, or you're more just self-serving on that?
I think you have to be humble enough to take any information anywhere that you can get. If, if you've got something good, and that's the thing too, is building a trusted relationship with your agronomist or with somebody that they're not just going to send you every little piece of garbage that they get, that they're like, hey, you guys really need to check this out. And maybe it's I know we're talking more like this technology, but just new technologies in biologicals. There's something, like they're not just going to send you everything, but they're going to be like, you really need to try this with your corn or wheat or soybeans. And, but yeah, just having an open mind and not being close-minded of like, well, this is how we've always done it. We're just going to keep doing this.
What are, in general, we don't have to talk exactly technology, but what are some of the biggest challenges that you see as a farmer today?
Where to put your money, probably.
Yeah.
'Cause there's so much coming down the pipeline. You can only pick and choose so many right now. Would probably be my first one.
Decision making.
Yep.
Yeah.
Labor a little bit. I mean, that's tough. I think the autonomous thing is going to help us in that, but until that gap is bridged, labor is especially when you get into the more rural parts, the western parts of North Dakota, South Dakota, Nebraska, there aren't people there.
I'm going to try something a little different and bring it back to technology.
Okay.
But the government regulation, and one specific thing that came up this spring was when the EPA was trying to change the rules through the Endangered Species Act. And so they were going to have us install vegetative buffers, impoundment ponds on every field. And when you drive through the valley, which is going to be different than your area, think about all the private ditches in your fields, which might be 10, 20, 30 ditches, and they want a vegetative buffer on every one of those so that your chemical doesn't get into a waterway and then go down a ditch and then go to a stream somewhere and kill the spotted bat that's in New Zealand. Anyway, I assume that all of you submitted your comments on there to try to stop some of this, because the problem with that was they were only going to use land management techniques like the vegetative buffers and holding ponds to get the chemicals to settle out. They weren't using any of our advances in technology that we have at our hands already, and perhaps like a see and spray technology that's coming out where we'll only be killing weeds or bugs. We won't be blanketing the whole fields. They don't take that into account. Instead of making all these rules, they could say that you need to use technology.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. Okay. It's hard to see up here, but does anyone have a question for our farmers who were gracious enough to come and visit us today? Ooh, the one with all the questions typically, yep.
I just found out about it about a month ago, meeting with Kelly over Zoom, and I downloaded the app, and I just have not got anything integrated yet. So it's in the process. I'm jumping on there.
Not the best time of year, probably, but.
Yeah, sometime.
So I too wasn't aware of some of the capabilities of it, and then I was talking with somebody about, man, when we're planting, I really wish we could have an inventory of the seed in our warehouse and at the co-op, what seed we have there to pick up and what we've used and manage all that, and chemicals as well. And we're like, well, we have that at Bushel. And it's one of those things, there's so many things out there that I just was probably overwhelmed and overlooked it, and it was right there.
Yep.
And so I'll probably be using it for that very shortly.
Kind of put a disclaimer in. I did download farm logs like when it first came out. And I was
Oh,
like,
yeah.
I can't input all
Yeah.
this stuff. So I kind of went away for it. One of those things you go away from and come back. So definitely, disclaimer.
And I'll share a little bit with a lot of the conversations that I end up having is that if you've ever been in the app, you'll see there's a long list of features along the side. But a lot of people love the rainfall information, so that's where, they kind of stick and stay. And then they'll call up and they'll say, I didn't know I could do that. It's right there on the side. We talk a lot about, we send a lot of emails and communications and stuff, but if it's not top of mind, it's really hard to actually get there. So if you're not searching on Twitter for farm management software, then you might not be learning about it. Any others? Mm-hmm.
So yeah, working with my retailer, I work with a private one in town, and all the chemicals and my price per acre, or because it's all broken down by field, because they spray each field at one time. So if it's broken down, which products on there, and how much, and what it costs, and that goes into some platform to further help my input costs further down the road, and one less thing I have to enter, I think that would be awesome.
Yeah, that's great. Vince, did you have any thoughts on that?
So we work with a private ag retailer too for our seed and chemical, and honestly, and not that there's anything wrong with the large co-op, they're fine, but when you work with at least in my experience, working with a smaller agribusiness group, these guys are farmers too. I mean, they're and or their brother is the farmer, that does the majority of it, while they're the agronomists at these businesses. But you don't necessarily always get that at a larger cooperative, which I know some of you guys are, or the grain facilities. But it's I don't know. Yeah, the service is key to me in the agribusiness aspect of it.
Okay, I'm going to ask the favorite question of the day. Who would you love to have in your buddy seat, or do you already love to have in your buddy seat?
Oh, I got a little guy called a mini farmer, kind of grew up with me in there, but it's my little son Corbin, and then actually for our family, we got 2 kids, my wife's here, and then our baby girl, so we can actually all fit in the cab for now, and we're not getting any bigger, so probably be all of them, and then probably my dad, so,
Yeah.
Yep.
Family, love it. How about you, Vince?
So obviously, I have my kids and my wife, but the one, and my wife, and she's down there, she knows. But the one that would be so much fun, because he homesteaded it. I knew him for 15 years of my life. His father homesteaded it, but my great grandfather, who's since passed on, but it would blow his mind to see what we're doing on his farm that his dad homesteaded in the late 1890s or 1890. That would just blow his mind. That would be a cool person to have in the buddy seat,
That would be fun.
and to show that to what we're doing now compared to him with horses. And he obviously he died in the 90s, and so he saw tractors, but and used them a little bit, but not the technology we have now.
That's amazing. How about you, Red?
I'll start out by saying I am in no way affiliated with Bushel. But I would love to have, after getting to know all of you, I would love to have the Bushel team ride in the tractor for a day, just so they could see the phone calls that farmers take, the text messages that you have to take with your input suppliers, your mechanics, your employees, and everybody else, your bankers, everybody that's all involved with our farm. And the communication, it's overwhelming how much time we're actually doing all those things. And I know there's smart people in this room that could help us do it better.
Yeah, thank you for that.
They just need to see it.
So you're spraying tomorrow and I can come, right?
Right.
Okay, good. I'll be there. Well, thank you for letting me do my favorite thing of all time, talk to you all, and thank you all for listening and questions.